Ladies and gentlemen of the media, good morning and welcome down to Congress Place 5 for our final press conference for the month of November 2019. My name is Ryan Belgrave, National Chairman of the Guyana Youth and Student Movement, youth arm of the PNCR, and I will be the moderator for today's press conference. As is customary, we will have a senior party official reading today's prepared statement, and of course he will be adding to the prepared statement with some additional comments at this time. Then we will open the floor to questions and comments by you, the members of the media. So let us have today's press statement being read by the Director General of the Ministry of the Presidency and Executive Member of the People's National Congress Reform, Mr. Joseph Harmon.
Thank you very much, Ryan. The statement today reads that the PPP has no interest in credible elections. From the very inception, the People's National Congress Reform, through a Partnership for National Unity, supported GYSM's intent to conduct house-to-house registration in 2019. In fact, the entire National Assembly, including the PPP, supported that intent by appropriating the required funds. With the passage of the no confidence motion, the PPPC reneged and called for immediate elections using the list derived from the National Register of Registrants database, consisting of data dating back to 2008. The PNCR, recognizing that the PPP's intent to use a flawed list, immediately objected and called for house-to-house registration to cleanse the old padded list. After the old list was retired, GYSM began the process of house-to-house registration. Thousands of Guyanese were registered in this exercise. Several of them were young people who turned 18 years of age since the last elections. However, with the passage of time, due to the various court actions, the conduct of house-to-house registration, which was embarked upon, no longer remained a delaying factor in the delivery of elections. More so, after it was prematurely terminated, even though the court ruled that it was legal and illegitimate exercise. In the face of these new circumstances, the PPPC still insists that the data gathered during the house-to-house exercise should not be used. If that position prevails, it means that over 60,000 new registrants who were only recorded during the house-to-house exercise would not be committed to the database. Consequently, over 30,000 voters, those 18 years and over, will not find themselves on the voters list. And those persons who changed their particulars during the house-to-house period would be listed with the old particulars. Why should the PPP want to so disenfranchise new would-be voters? Moreover, the tens of thousands who have changed their particulars, why is dishonest Irfan and the PPP seeking to deny the young people of Guyana the right to vote? The PPP's attitude to the electoral roll is further manifest in their approach to the distribution of ID cards. GYSM has failed in its repeated efforts to locate several thousands of persons for the purpose of delivering ID cards. All this time, over 17,000 ID cards remain uncollected. While those persons' existence remain in question, the only concern of the PPPC is that those names representing the dead, the living, or the non-existent should remain on the list. We must ask ourselves the question, why? The PNCR asserts that the PPPC only interest in preserving the bloated, uncleaned, and dated list is so that their managed ghosts could be more effectively hidden and thus more difficult to ferret out. The list in this vulnerable state is prime for voter manipulation, as was reported without redress in 2006, and for which a presiding officer was fired on the spot in 2011, and also caused a registration officer to part company with GYSM in 2018. The PNCR maintains its call for a clean and inclusive list. The ruling of the Chief Justice that house-to-house registration was legal was accepted by all. The use of the data will not impact negatively on the election date. It should therefore be used in the interest of free and fair elections. Elections in which every eligible and qualified citizen is able to exercise the franchise. All registrants have a reasonable expectation that their applications will be processed in time for their names to be included in the official list of electors for the elections scheduled for the 2nd of March 2020. The PNCR therefore relies on the decisions already made by GYSM, which have been reported in the press, and the public assurances given through its chairperson, Justice Retired Claudette Singh, that all the data collected during the house-to-house registration exercise will, after having been subjected to the Commission's well-established standard procedures, be utilized to update the existing National Register of Registrants database, and consequently, the list of electors to be used for the upcoming elections. That is the statement for today, ladies and gentlemen. Additionally, I wish to state that this morning I received, I suppose, an advance copy of the PPP manifesto, which is to be launched, I understand, sometime today. And therefore, at a quick glance, wish to offer some comments on this document, which, of course, in the fullness of time, will be subjected to other more in-depth analysis by persons who can scrutinize these promises that are being made by the PPP in what they call their plan for prosperity. I call this a plan for poverty of the Guyanese people. Because looking at it, I can see a set of ideas and programs which have already been put in place by this administration being attempted to be won over and sold to the Guyanese public as something that is original to the PPP. Several of these. And I would like to quickly go into some of them because it will take me maybe 2 sessions to deal with these promises that are being made here that in very many cases bear no semblance to reality. I'll just take some of them for example. It speaks here about rescuing our productive sector and addresses some issues in mining and sugar and other areas. So let me extract maybe 2 out of this one and then I'll go to another. First of all, the manifesto says that the people will reopen sugar estates. Well, they need to say whether they're going to open Diamond, Luzignan, and Vorseals and all of these estates, which were closed a long time ago. But if we were to look at it very carefully, the sense I get is that what they are promising is to reopen those estates which were closed in the reorganization of Gaisuko by this present administration. But I think we need to go back a little bit so that we understand where we are with this PPP promise about reopening sugar estates. In the 10th Parliament, for almost every single budget, the PPP promised to turn around GYSM. There were so many turnaround plans in the National Assembly that we were getting a turn. Every year, so many billions for turnaround, so many billions for turnaround. And then after we came into office in 2015, what we decided to do as a government was to launch, first of all, an inquiry into sugar. Let us see where we are. Let us see where all of these billions of dollars were going. And in the words of one of our MPs at that time, why was this money going down a dark hole? And so when we examined this, what we called for initially was a commission of inquiry into sugar. And we had a massive commission of inquiry with expert persons in the industry. And after about 6 months or so, they produced a report. That report was studied and it was presented. We presented copies of the report to the leader of the opposition, to the parliament. And subsequently we called for a more in-depth plan of action arising out of that commission of inquiry by GYSM. GYSM then appointed a group of technically competent persons to produce a plan which will arise out of the recommendations in the COI. They produced that plan, and the plan came to Cabinet for deliberation. Cabinet then said, let us have a white paper on sugar, so that the National Assembly and everybody could see what we are thinking about. So we produced a white paper on sugar, which was presented to the National Assembly and all of the members of Parliament and other society members in society. When that was finished, even before we took further action, we called for a stakeholders engagement. And this stakeholders engagement was with the government, the opposition, and the unions in the sugar industry. And sitting down around the table, we said this is what the position is with sugar. And this is our proposal about going forward with sugar. Let us see what you have, and let us see whether we need to reorganize what it is that we propose to do. On those engagements, GAU produced a response. NACI produced a response that was a sort of a version of the GAU's response. The PPP produced nothing. All they said we needed to do was a social impact amelioration study. That was their position. So after 23 years running this industry, you have nothing to show. And all you have to say is that you need a social impact assessment study. So we went ahead and took the hard decision about reorganizing the sugar industry. What that meant was that we were going to keep 3 estates in sugar production, and the other estates would have been privatized. Now, when this, even before this took place, we had meetings across the country with the people in the sugar industry, with sugar workers, and indicated that as a result of that decision that there were certain things which had happened in the industry. We again met with GAU in the cabinet room to indicate that as a result of the closure of some of these estates, that compensation will have to be paid. That is the monies will have to be paid to the workers who were being laid off. And we worked out a plan in which those workers will get their benefits. All of this was done. And the Ministry of Social Protection went to those communities to look to see how best they can ameliorate the impact of the closure of these sugar estates by putting in place social impact programs. So for the PPP now in their manifesto to say we will reopen these sugar estates, I would like to know on what basis, on what information basis are they going to do that? Will they reopen Skeldon that they never opened and spend $250 million United States dollars, which as far as I understand they still can't account for properly? Will they answer the question raised about the 25 million euros, which I see only recently the ambassador to the EU had to upbraid the former president, Mr. Ramatara, about statements he made about that EU grant. So this blunt statement that we will reopen sugar estates, I think when you examine it, when you go into the details, you will see how fake this promise is. And it is not something which any right-thinking Guyanese can actually take on face value, that air finale, if ever by some, the word I used the other day was fluke, he were to become a president, that he can in fact deliver on this promise about reopening sugar estates. The other one, of course, I have here is in mining. They say, okay, we will work with the miners and their organizations to remove obstacles to their development, reverse VAT, establish fairer, more transparent systems, extend and upgrade roads in mining communities. Roads in the mining communities. The government over the last 2 years or so have spent over $4 billion on hinterland roads for 2019. Miners, foresters, and residents in regions 1, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are singing the praises of the government for the roads which we have done in these communities. Small miners, the Mining Syndicate initiative has been responsible for giving hundreds of small miners greater access to land. Additionally, 4 mining lotteries were held this year alone, and which gave out over 500 mining blocks to small miners. They speak about training. The Guyana Mining School and the technical institutes have trained over 700 young miners in various techniques such as mapping, mine-out pits, pit preparation, and safety. They speak here again about tax concessions, and we have to remember that the VAT that they're speaking about, reducing VAT, taking away VAT, and so on, was introduced by the PPP at 16%. When we came into office, we have reduced VAT in an incremental way from the time we came into office to where it is right now. And so when you speak about VAT as if this is something that the APNU AFC administration just brought in, then we have to remind people that this was something that was brought in by the PPP administration. And so where tax concessions are concerned, they speak about that. The Ministry of Finance and GRA determined that equipment was being brought in from mining, but were being used in the city. So people get concessions to bring in equipment for mining in the mining industry, and instead they were using it in the city itself. And so these were practices which were irregular and illegal. It was also seen that there were hundreds of pieces of equipment in the country that was adequate for the projected production necessary in these areas. Therefore, some of the VAT concessions had to be removed. However, miners that are recommended by their organizations continue to enjoy duty-free concession for fuel and spare parts. And then one last thing I'll take up before, because I think I'll take up all day, I tell you, if I deal with this thing here. They speak about how they will deal with the oil, the proceeds of oil, securing the benefits of oil and gas. Well, I believe everybody who know anything about gas, oil, money, and so on, they don't want the PBP to get a hand on this side. In fact, Dr. Mangal wrote that the PBP must never get their hands on this oil. That means this, Mangal said he put it in the newspaper. So I'm repeating it. But then, in what they're saying here now, in their framework for proper management of the resource, the PBP say they will establish an arm's length sovereign wealth fund, insulating it from political interference. This is already the law. We have a sovereign wealth fund, which is an act and which incorporates all of these things that they have here. So to repeat it as if this is something new is really warming up food that's been there already. We don't cook this food. We got it on the table. You come in to eat, you say, I want this thing, I put it in the microwave. And you warm it up, putting it out to the nation as if this is your thing. You know, it is wrong. You know, some time ago I was in another country, and there's some women who like, they don't like to cook. So they would go to the restaurant and buy the food in a pot and take it home and then serve it and warm it up and then serve it. So when you home there now, you believe that all this food cook home, but you buy it somewhere else. This is what they're doing here. They're taking this thing here already cooked, put it in the microwave, warm it up, and then trying to serve it as if it's there. But you can go to the law and you will find what they are saying here already in writing, debated and passed in the National Assembly. And so we've already also determined that the central bank, or the Bank of Guyana, will be the place where this matter will be handled, where the proceeds from oil and gas will be dealt with. So all of these things that they have here, as far as I'm concerned, I think this is really an attempt to hoodwink the Guyanese people. That this here is no manifesto for prosperity. This is the PBP's manifesto for poverty. And this is where they want to take us back to where we were before 2015, when this country decided that they had enough of the PPP and they wanted a change. They wanted something that was fresh, something that was new, and they have indicated that in 2015. And I am quite positive that with the developments which have taken place over these last 4.5 years, that they will say, yes, Guyana is on the right track, and we want this track to continue. And so we will call again we vote again for the APNU AFC, and that the PNCR will be a central plank in what is going forward. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. I'm just reading the manifesto from the local government.
I mean, there's so many things there. They also spoke here about training, about the training of the young people, and about vocational training. I just got a note from the Board of Industrial Training that over the last year alone they trained 3,834 young persons in various skills. This is outside of the normal academic field where people have to go to the schools and then to university and so on. The Ministry of Education, through another vocational program, they have identified funds for at least 12 vocational schools that will also help to sap up the young people who are unable to make it in the traditional way, sap them up and bring them into the education system so that they themselves can be prepared for the benefits that will come from the proceeds of oil and gas and what is going to happen in all the other sectors of this country. So, ladies and gentlemen of the media, I thank you, and I'm prepared to answer the questions.
Yes.
Mr. Ryan.
Thank you very much, Director General Harmon, for, of course, the prepared statement of the People's National Congress Reform at this time, and also highlighting for us the deception of the dishonest PPPC and the dishonest Air Finale and Jack Deal's party as they prepare to release their manifesto this afternoon. The media now has the opportunity to field the prepared questions relating to the prepared statement or any other questions you may have at this time. We have an audio technician on standby with a microphone that can assist us.
Mr. Harmon, Samuel Sukanda, News Source. You spoke about the PPP's manifesto. What could you say when the coalition will be releasing their manifesto?
Okay, the coalition's manifesto is part of a four-stage process which we've engaged with the AFC. And that process involves, first of all, the acceptance and signing of what we call core principles. These core principles are what will guide us in the way we will conduct ourselves in the elections. The second stage is the agreements on an accord, the Comminsburg Accord, and that will determine the composition of our elections teams and so on. The third stage is the preparation of our manifesto. And of course, the final stage is our campaign and the launch and so on of our campaign. So the manifesto stage, I can say to you that the preliminary work has started on our manifesto, and that at the appropriate time, you will see a release of our manifesto. But let me say this to you, that our manifesto in 2015, which says the good life, and I think I should even make a comment on that as well, because we have always said that as a coalition, we are better together. That is the APNU and the yes, we are better together. Now, the PPP, they're trying to warm over our thing. We are stronger together. You know, so everything that we put out, they're trying to take a little diversion in it or warming it over and putting it over like if this is original, right? But we have said that, and there are several things which we have there in our manifesto, which is actually now being done. So that a lot of things that you will see in our manifesto, the thinking in our manifesto, will to some extent be a continuation of these programs that we're doing. It will be an elaboration of what we call a decade of development. There will be manifestations of how we see Guyana developing in the next decade. It will be a manifestation on how our Green State development strategy will affect the way in which governance takes place. So that if you look already at some of the renderings out there, you will find some elements of our thinking on our manifesto coming true. But I'll say to you that the work is going on insofar as the written work and so on, but conceptually we have some ideas already, in fact more than ideas, on what we propose to do. And this basically looks at a whole decade, how we're going to move Guyana in the next decade, and how we're going to move Guyana into the period covered by our Green State Development Strategy, which is another 20-year vision for Guyana. So, you know, we're going to see a plan that is located within a bigger plan. It's not just a 1 year or a 5 year plan, but it's one which will be part of a wider plan for the development of Guyana that people can buy into from now. So you will see that, and you will see clear, original thinking, and not just somebody tinkering with this and tinkering with that, and you know, say, this don't look nice, let me put it there, and things like that. You'll see clear thoughts, you'll see clear plans, clear pathway for action.
Sorry, during the Guyana Standard. Mr. Harmon, you spoke about sugar workers. I understand that the petition was made from some 500 sugar workers calling for the president for an increase in pay. Could you comment on that? Where are we at the moment?
I have not seen a petition. I've heard a statement by the leader of the opposition that he thinks that the government should pay the sugar workers and so on. That is not something I wish to comment on now, but you know, and the world knows that the sugar workers' wages are dealt with by the Guyana Sugar Corporation. And they've always been conditioned by production levels and the fortunes of the sugar industry. When sugar workers get bonus and these things like that, the rest of the country don't get the same because they are conditioned by what is the situation in the industry. I understand now that there's a claim that, okay, that the sugar industry is not doing so well, and that therefore the increases that are being paid by the public servants will in fact cause some amount of increase in the cost of living in some communities. These are arguments that are being made, but I still am to be convinced. But as I said, I have not seen the petition. I haven't seen the rationale behind it, and so I will wait on when that comes, and if in fact it does go to the president or goes to the cabinet for there to be deliberation, then we will deliberate on it and see what comes out of it. But I would not want to make a statement which binds the government or binds the party at this point, but just to say that the employers of the sugar workers is the Guyana Sugar Corporation.
And the last time we spoke, I asked about I think cabinet government was actually considering some kind of, well, you said financial grants. But you guys had to wait on the impact assessment or the assessment from the agencies, from the CDC, with regards to the high tide flooding on the coast. Could you say whether cabinet received that assessment and what are some of the plans moving forward?
Well, I can say to you that only yesterday, Minister Patterson gave an excellent presentation on our response to the flooding, and on the cost of actually building the sea defenses. In fact, we have, I think, 473 kilometers of sea defense. And in many cases, in many parts of it, it is just the mangroves that prevent the waves from coming in, and in some cases it's just earthen dams. But he has indicated that in the next 2 or 3 years, it will require over $14 billion to do the emergency works that are needed. And that his ministry receives on an annual basis in the budget $2 billion. So that there's a big gap between what is required and what he receives. And so this will inform the way in which we present our case to international agencies. It will inform our case and how we present it in the budget debates and so on that will come about. But certainly it is quite an expensive undertaking to maintain the seawalls at the current level and with the current amount of money we have budgeted for that purpose.
Well, with the residents more affected, will they be getting any financial grants?
Well, the Civil Defense Commission and is the agency that has a responsibility for determining whether in fact any grants, any relief is to be given. And as I said, I think I spoke at some time before that an assessment had to be done by the Civil Defense Commission and by the National Emergency Platform, which is wider than the Civil Defense Commission and includes ministries and other agencies. And they will determine whether in fact any grant is given and to what extent that grant is to be given. So I cannot be very precise in a specific answer that says, yes, this is what's going to happen. But I think what they did, they were categorizing those persons who would have access to a grant.
Morning, David Papana, Starbuck News. Could you say how close you guys are, you, the PNCR, and other parties to signing the Cummings-World Accord?
We're very close to signing the Cummings-World Accord. I can say to you that the high-level inter-party team continues to meet. They have, I think, agreement in principle on several things. They are still meeting, and we anticipate that in a short time they'll be able to come to the point where they can actually sign on the dotted line. As I said, maybe yesterday or the day before, that the chairman of the Partnership for National Unity, who is the president and the leader of our party, and the leader of the Alliance for Change have already made public statements that the APNU and the AFC will be going together as a coalition in the next elections. I think that it is also very clear that President David Granger will be our choice as our presidential candidate, and therefore the rest will follow.
Ladies and gentlemen of the media, we thank you for coming down to Congress Place Fire today, and of course thank you for your questions. Do look forward to having this interaction with you next Friday at our next press conference. You'll have a safe journey back.
Thank you.